If you were to sit down and make a list of scenarios that would be in the greatest playoff series of all time, games 1 and 2 of the Celtics Bulls, it had most of it. An intense overtime, multiple game-winning opportunities, back and forth lead changes, Kevin Garnett yelling all types of obscenities at the opponent. It started off on the right foot. And then, it all appeared to promptly die in Game 3. But you know what hasn't died? My interest in the Hardwood Amino app that I've been using for well over a year now. Simply put, Hardwood Amino is the best app that exists if you're a basketball fan. Log on, and there's no shortage of activities for you to do, including the ones where you can interact with hundreds of other members who are online at the same time. You can head over to the public chat room and talk to other members about a certain subject, or discuss a live game, which is my personal favorite. There's a nice collection of quizzes made by the community that range from very easy to extremely difficult. There's a section where you can stay up to date with what's going on in the real NBA, and you can even create your own profile where you can make blogs and articles for other members to read. If you love basketball, there's just not a better app for you to own, and it's free. If you're interested in downloading the app, I've left the links for both iOS and Android in the description and in the comment section. Hope to see you there. In the words of Clean Prince Gaming, the excitement and tension this series had built up through the first 2 games didn't just die in Game 3, it was murdered. Or, well, at least that's what it looked like for a moment. Look, I'm gonna keep it a buck with y'all right now. I couldn't come up with an engaging way to narrate a first-class ass whooping like the one you're about to see, so I have a different idea. Enjoy.
Salmons is out on Pierce, who has not missed. He is 5 of 5. He is 6 of 6. He bangs in that 15-footer against even shot clock. Rondo goes, concesses the shot, and he's burned with the triple by Rajon Rondo. 3. Rondo with 13. Oh, nice pass. Inside, and Davis gets it. Noah picked up by Barber. Out to Allen for 3, and he puts it in over Gordon. By Allen Marbury, lasers a pass to Allen, the late footer by Gordon. That's another 3 by Ray Allen. He's knocked down 2, consecutive triples. Ray Allen, Tim Thomas, Ray Allen has just hit another 3-point shot so far. Rondo to Davis, Pierce, Salmons, that is a 3, and Paul Pierce with 24. It's their second daughter. Louisiana's fan favorite in Boston. Nice ball rotation. Great move to House. A late close by Johnson. That's a 3.
He had injury problems there. He sort of his other knee. Here's Eddie House. He's coming in. I talked about guys taking shots.
Boston had finally found their footing. There was no ties, no lead changes, and Ben Gordon finally looked human again after he left Earth in Game 2. So for the moment, the world had returned to normal as Boston coasted comfortably into Game 4 with a 21-point blowout, all the momentum in the series, Chicago's confidence and dignity. You get the idea. Remember, after Game 2, the idea was that Boston was the superior team anyways, so if anything like Game 3 were to happen, it'd make Games 1 and 2 look like false alarms. And anybody who thought like that was absolutely wrong. Turns out, this game was just an intermission before shit really hit the fan. Game 4 was supposed to be the beginning of the end for Chicago. This was the part where Boston would use their momentum to take a 3-1 lead back to the Garden. And remember, this was a good 6 or 7 years before the 3-1 choking epidemic started infecting superior teams, so back then that meant a series like this was over, and Chicago came out playing like they knew that'd be the case. This game was a dogfight the entire way out. No, literally. Check out this thing Brad Miller did to Glenn Davis. I'm pretty sure this flop inspired LeBron's fake death about 4 years later. Nobody ever led this game by more than 7 points the entire way through. This was games 1 and 2 all over again, as there were 12 ties and 28 lead changes that kept everyone guessing. Do you know how exhausting 28 lead changes are? All the many heart attacks it caused within the fan base? You'll see soon. Despite having only 1 3-pointer the entire game, which turned out to be the most important one, Ben Gordon was still hitting ridiculous, off-balance, contested shots inspired by Kobe, and we were well on our way to another adrenaline-filled finish. And what did Boston always do in these situations? I'm pretty sure you can guess this one by now.
Allen for 3! It's good! He ties the game with 9.8 remaining!
The thing that gets me here is, what in the hell was Chicago's defense doing? Somebody chose a Jigglypuff while they were defending this play. The Celtics were down by 3, Rondo, who wasn't a perimeter shooter, was handling the ball on the perimeter, and the action was clearly centered around getting what was then the greatest shooter of all time an open shot. Off the Glenn Davis screen, literally nobody followed Ray Allen, the only threat on that side of the floor. Ray Allen could have taken a nap, woke up, got some breakfast, signed with the enemy team in free agency, and he still would have been wide open. Easily the best look at the basket he had all series. And with that, Chicago would respond by giving Rose the chance to play hometown hero for the night. 9 seconds on the clock, the score tied up, and a chance to get the best possible shot to tie the series.
Have a foul to give. Miller gets it right back into Rose's hands. A chance to win it here in the final seconds. Rose on the drive, puts up the shot. Won't go. Rebound tipped and taken by Pierce, and we'll go to overtime.
Rose sent up a prayer that was nearly answered, but our friend upstairs decided we needed another overtime. And with that, the series entered its second overtime and its third nail-biter in 4 games. I sat here for a while trying to figure out how to sum up this overtime period in Game 4. It was frustrating because there's just no way to recreate the tension it caused watching it live, so here's what we're gonna do. With about 30 seconds left in overtime, Boston leading by 2, Pierce has a chance to ice the game. Instead, he chokes just like he did in Game 1 where he had a similar chance to finish it off. He coughs up the ball and Scalabrine decides he needs to look mortal, so he spares the Bulls by committing what appears to be a terrible and obvious clear path foul. But of course, none of us know better than Scal. He knew Heinrich was going to choke under the pressure, and the Bulls came out of that entire ordeal down 1 with 20 seconds left. Instead of having the game tied, they'd have the possession down 1. The Celtics defend it well, get the rebound, and ultimately Paul Pierce ends up on the line where he again chokes. It was going to be a 1-possession game regardless, but it would have put Chicago in a position where they'd have to have a 3. And by this point, you should take note that Paul Pierce has had many uncharacteristic moments. The poor field goal percentage throughout the series, the missed free throw in Game 1, the turnover he just had right before this. It was getting hard to tell if he was going to make an appearance this series. Gordon takes it to the rim and gets put flat on his ass because at this point it's the only way to assure he's actually going to miss a shot in the clutch. He too splits the free throws, meaning at the end of this whole thing, Chicago ends up right back where they started, only this time with 9 seconds left. So overtime ended up being an insane game of cat and mouse where Chicago kept trying to finesse their way into tying the game. They tried it the easy way, but Pierce and Allen just weren't going to miss free throws that night, and you could just feel the Chicago crowd getting anxious with the whole process. This had to be the longest overtime period known to mankind. So again, with 9 seconds and the ball, Chicago was done playing it safe. Safe was boring. They reverted back to the only thing that worked all series one last time.
Inbound quick, back out to Gordon. Gordon looking, Gordon for 3.
It turns out that around 2008 and 2009, Paul Pierce had this nasty habit of being just a few tenths of a second off his contest. You see how on this one it's an ISO play and Hedo Turkoglu still ends up at the peak of his shot before Pierce even jumps? Same thing on this play. Pierce did one of those Seabiscuit slips from Shark Tale where he slipped on basically nothing and ended up way too behind on this play as Ben Gordon calmly knocked down his 900th clutch shot of the series. To make matters worse, on the last play of overtime, the ball didn't make it into either Pierce or Allen's hands. Rajon fucking Rondo ended up taking a jumper despite having 4.5 seconds to get the ball into anybody else's hands. Next. Overtime number 2 went about as well as you might expect from a team missing their former Defensive Player of the Year. This game had been so airtight and had drug on for so long that any mistake either team made was magnified, and Boston was making a lot of them. Nobody was getting back in transition, players were left wide open in the paint, Joakim Noah was making posters. This shit was wild, fam. And soon enough, Boston found themselves in the same spot Chicago was one period earlier, trying to finesse their way into another overtime. Down by 4 with under 30 seconds, Boston started making their last-ditch efforts to get back into the game, and I want you to hear how dead and exhausted this crowd sounded when they finally got one to go.
Davis tips it back out to Pierce. Pierce fakes, open 3, it's good! Pierce rattles it in, and it's a 1-point game.
Pierce hit a clutch 3 right there. Chicago still in danger of going down 3-1, and there were no oohs, no ahs, no shock, no reaction. This Chicago crowd was just dead and ready to go home. It's almost like nobody really cared about the results by that point. If you were watching this game live, especially as a Chicago fan, you would understand. The amount of suspense this game had caused over a large amount of time, it was draining. So finally, after the 1000th free throw attempt late in the game and a possession switch, Boston had one last chance to hang on and give themselves a chance to get that 3-1 stranglehold. And who else better to make it happen than the truth, right?
Celtics now have to go for the three-pointer. Pierce with Simons on. Pierce. Block. Gordon the rebound. That's it. The series is tied out at 2 games apiece.
57 minutes and 18 seconds of game time, clutch play after clutch play, and Chicago just barely managed to hang on and tie the series at 2 games apiece. The events in this game were pretty significant, so let's take a look. After Game 4, if you were a Chicago fan, you were on cloud 9 because your team just managed to survive this long against the defending champs. And if you were a Celtics fan, you were like, oh shit, they just took our best punch and we still lost. Check this out. Rajon Rondo played 55 of 57 possible minutes in Game 4 and had a 25, 11, and 11 triple-double. Even though Pierce's struggles for the series had continued, he pitched in 29 and 7 with multiple clutch plays, even though he could have definitely been more efficient and more careful with the ball. Ray Allen had 28 points, Glenn Davis had 11 rebounds, even Kendrick Perkins almost had a double-double with 15 points and 9 rebounds. From the perspective of the Celtics score box, without Kevin Garnett in the lineup, this was about as good as a game as you could hope for if it wasn't going to be total domination like Game 3. This thriller brought the totals to 33 ties and 72 lead changes. Meanwhile, no games aside from Game 3 were decided by more than 3 points. Heading back to Boston, the series had been all anyone could ask for, and it was well known that the winners of Game 5 in a tied series traditionally went on to win the whole thing. So basically, this next part was pretty damn important. Could Chicago continue to shock the world? Would Paul Pierce finally show up in a big way? Would Scalabrine finally show up and save the day?
On the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.